Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to my August TBR Side Scroller game. So this is the second episode of the TBR Side Scroller, a TBR game that I had created a month ago. It's kind of based on D&D, based on your typical side scroller games. If you haven't already seen my July TBR gameplay video, please check it out in the link above. And if you'd like to know any rules of how to play the game, if you'd like to play it yourself, or just to kind of get an idea of what I'm doing in this video, please check out the video before that one as well. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So just to kind of go over very briefly, I was able to complete my TBR for the month of July, so there will not be any consequences for not being able to finish that. I did have to kind of switch around one of the prompts because I ended up taking part in a readathon at the very beginning of the month, and that kind of added some books that I wasn't necessarily planning on reading for that month. So I ended up reading more than I was expecting to, which made it not possible to technically finish the TBR. However, I was able to kind of make one of those books that I had read extra as one of the prompts. And then the other book that I wasn't able to finish at the end of the month was the Mistborn book, but I'm not technically counting that as failing the TBR, only because that was a viewer pick. So that technically wasn't part of the TBR. I just really wanted to try and get to that book if possible. I wasn't able to really get to it. It was a very hectic month, but I am hoping to read that in the next month or two, and I might even try to make that a prompt for this next TBR game, so I hopefully will get to that soon. But as far as the other prompts go from last month, I was able to finish the TBR. So one book that I will kind of briefly mention that I'm hopefully going to be able to make a prompt for this next TBR is We Go On Forever by Sarah Govett. This is the Burned Books Club pick for the months of July and August. I wasn't able to read this the month of July. I kind of figured I wouldn't be able to, so I will have to read this month, and hopefully I'll be able to make it a prompt. Otherwise, I will have to just kind of fit this in. In case you don't know, the back says, Arthur is dying. He must transition within the next 4 weeks or face permanent memory loss. Alba is studying, preparing to impress the mentors in an all-important interview. And if she picked as the next apprentice, she will be reunited with her best friend and cross the wilderness for the first time. They meet and everything comes together, and everything falls apart. So I'm actually really excited to read this because it is a dystopian book. That's what the Burned Books Club, run by Maddie over at Books Browsing Blog and Spoops over at Spoopy Hole, they kind of started this club at the very beginning of the year to kind of just read a bunch of dystopian books. And we've read some classics, we've read some favorites from them. This is the first time that we've read a book that is very brand new. This just came out a few months ago, and it actually is based on the UK because this is actually a UK book. It's a little smaller of a paperback than the normal paperbacks that we get here in America, and it's also a little less floppy. Like, this one's kind of floppy, but usually paperbacks are a bit floppier than this, so it's kind of standard for how the UK makes their paperbacks, I guess. So I'm really excited to read this one. It's very short. It's about 230 pages or so it shouldn't take me too long to read this, and I'll see if I can fit this into a TBR prompt. The other book that I do need to read this month actually is an ARC. So I had received an ARC a month ago. I don't remember what the ARC is called off the top of my head. I don't have my iPad with me, but it is an ebook. I'll have the cover of the book up here. But yeah, I have to read it, I believe, before August 15th, because that's when NetGalley is going to take it away, and I want to make sure that I read it and review it as soon as possible. So that will actually be the first book that I read in the month of August, just because I really want to make sure that I get that done. And again, if I can try to fit that into a prompt, if possible, I will. Like I said, I can't remember quite what the book was called. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but I do know that it is a fantasy book. So hopefully I'll be able to get that fit in. And I know that it wasn't too big. It was about 350 pages. So again, hopefully I'll make that into a prompt. Otherwise, it's just going to be an extra book that I add on. So because of the 2 extra books that I have, whether they become prompts or not, and because I think there is another readathon that's going to be happening this month, I don't remember exactly who is going to be running it. If I find out when this video comes up, I will link them down below. Otherwise, you'll see me talk about the readathon in a future vlog. But I have a few things going on this month that's going to make me pretty busy. So I'm going to actually make this only 5 books. Normally I would roll, if you know the rules for the game, normally I would roll to see if I read 5 books or if I have to add books on based on D20. But I'm actually going to only make it 5 books this month, only because I have the extra readathon. I have a few other video ideas in mind that I really need to read other books that might not necessarily be in the TBR, and I have the 2 other books that I had just briefly mentioned. So I'm going to just make it 5 books this month to try and make it a little easier on myself. So hopefully I will be able to finish those along with any extra books that I read throughout the month. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and roll for the first prompt. So the first prompt is actually, I rolled a 7, and 7 is fantasy. Okay, so the book that I was talking about before, the arc that I have, is called The Hand of the Sun King by J.T. Greathouse, and it's actually coming out on August 5th, so hopefully I'll be able to finish this. The vlog for this book won't be out before August 5th, unfortunately, but I will be vlogging the experience of reading this and kind of my thoughts throughout the story. But the description says, an original fantasy filled with magic and culture, the story of a character torn between 2 names, 2 loyalties, and 2 definitions of good and evil. On his father's side, a legacy of proud loyalty and service to the godlike Siamese emperor spanning generations, and it is expected that Alder, too, will follow this tradition by passing the imperial exams, learning the accepted ways of magic, and, if he serves with honor, enhancing his family's prominence by rising to take a most powerful position in Saiyan, the hand of the emperor. But from his mother, he has inherited defiance from the empire, a history of wild gods and magic, unlike anything the imperial sorcerers could yet control. It began when his spirited, rebellious grandmother took Alder into the woods and introduced him to her ways he has never been able to forget. So I was really excited. So I had picked this book out. I really wanted to read it as an arc, and they had thankfully sent it to me, the publisher. So it's an ebook. I'm really excited to read this. Like I said, I really want to read this as soon as possible because it will be leaving my NetGalley page pretty soon. I don't want it to hurt my review record. So I will be reading this book, reviewing it, and also talking about it in a future vlog. I'm really excited to get to this book finally, and I'm glad that I was able to make this a prompt, especially for the first prompt of fantasy. Now I'm going to roll for the second prompt. Okay, so I rolled a 79, and the prompt for 79 is hyped. So that prompt means that I have to read a book that I'm very excited about, that's very hyped up. So the book that I picked for hyped is going to be Out of Character by Annabeth Albert. I just bought this book. I bought it when it first was released at the beginning of July, and I haven't been able to get to it yet, but I am really, really excited about it. It's the sequel to Conventionally Yours. As you know from previous videos, I absolutely fell in love with Conventionally Yours. It was a book that I was excited to read, but I wasn't really sure if I would really enjoy it because I was just starting to get into contemporary, and I ended up falling head over heels in love with the book. I loved the characters, I loved the story, and I am really excited because this story follows Jasper, which was a very minor character in Conventionally Yours, but this whole book is dedicated to Jasper and to his love life, to his journey, and just what's going on outside of the original Alden and Colin, I believe their names were. I can't quite remember. But anyway, I really enjoy Conventionally Yours. I'm really excited to see what kind of a story Out of Character brings. I saw a bunch of frogs like along the sides of the pages, and there's like a little frog on the scepter, which is really interesting. I'm really curious to see like what exactly that means with Jasper. But I'm really excited to read this. It's by far a hyped book. It just got released, and I'm really happy to have this in my TBR. Alright, so this is going to be the roll for prompt number 3. So the prompt for 12 is secondhand. And secondhand just means that it is a book that isn't new. It's not in brand new condition. It's been used. I must have bought it at like an antique store, a used bookstore, whatever that might be. So it just has to be secondhand. So for the prompt of secondhand, I'm going to choose Misery by Stephen King. If you didn't know, I've been trying to read all of the Stephen King books that I own, which is pretty much all of them that he's ever written. And Misery is one that I've been actually really excited to read. It's a very early book in his career. I pretty much know the whole story already, but I'm very much looking forward to reading it finally. Paul Sheldon. He's a best-selling novelist who has finally met his biggest fan. Her name is Annie Wilkes, and she is more than a rabid reader. She is Paul's nurse, tending his shattered body after an automobile accident. But she is also his captor, keeping him prisoner in her isolated house. Now Annie wants Paul to write his greatest work, just for her. She has a lot of ways to spur him on. One is a needle, another is an axe, and if they don't work, she can really get nasty. So I'm really excited to finally be able to read this. I believe they even made it a movie, I think. yeah, it says right here, it was made into a spectacular new film. I mean, this book was written quite a while ago, so in either case, I'm really excited to be able to finally get to this. It's not too long. It's about 300 pages, and I'm just so excited to be able to finally get into the story. So this will be my second hand. All right, so now I'm going to roll for prompt number 4. Okay, so prompt number 4 is going to be, I rolled a 21, and that is standalone. So I have to choose a book that is a standalone that is not part of a series. I'm just going to make it easy on myself. I'm going to do for standalone We Go On Forever, which is the Burn Books Club pick. So go ahead and make that a prompt. Okay, and now I'm going to roll for prompt number 5. Alright, in prompt number 5, I rolled a 15, and 15 is mood read, which means that I have to choose a book that I'm just really excited about, that I'm very much in the mood to read at the moment. So for the mood read, I'm actually going to choose a book that was part of my July TBR that I ended up kind of shifting over the prompts that it originally was for, so that I didn't technically fail that challenge. And I've been really wanting to get to it anyway. It's the second book to the Schwab's Gathering of Shadows series. It is a Gathering of Shadows. I don't know exactly what the trilogy is called, but it's the second book to that trilogy of like the magic of the Red London, Black London, Grey Londons, all of those. And I don't really want to read the back of it just because I don't want to spoil anything, but it is the sequel to basically a story about Delilah Bard and Kel, and they just got through a lot of things that happened in the first book, and it kind of ended really well actually, but there were some loose ends. And now the second book is kind of following them again in kind of seeing how this adventure is unfolding and kind of seeing how it changes, and that there's so much more to these different worlds of these different magical Londons, and like what the story will bring and how these different worlds are actually connected in a very different way. I haven't looked too much into the back either because I really want to see how the story progresses, and I will definitely be vlogging this one because I'm really excited. This was actually the first book that I had vlogged, I believe, on my channel. So the first book, I mean. So I'm really excited to be able to read the second book. It is a little bit of a bigger book. It's about 500 pages. But again, I'm really excited to actually get to this one. It's definitely a mood read in that I want to continue this series and be able to finish it hopefully in the next month or two. And I'm really happy that I'm able to get this to be a part of my TBR. Okay, so this is going to be my TBR for the month of August. I'm actually really happy with this. And these are just 4 books, and then I also have the ebook that I'm going to be reading. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm glad that the 2 books that I really did need to get to by the end of this next month, I was able to fit into prompts. And I'm hoping to be able to read a few other books, of course, along with these. I don't know exactly, like I said, what the read-along is going to be, or the readathon is going to be, so I'm going to try and fit books into whatever those prompts are. And I also really want to try and get to a few other books, so just kind of some honorable mentions that I might be able to read this month. I want to get into Mistborn finally. That was the book that was recommended to me by a viewer. I really wanted to read that in the month of July, but I didn't have time because it is a pretty big book. So if I have time this month, I would love to get to that. I also really want to continue the, I believe it's like I don't remember what exactly it's called, but Truth Witch was the first book of this like Witchlands series. I was able to read that a month ago in June. And I haven't read the second book, which is Wind Witch yet, which is the second book in that series. And so that'd be really nice if I could get to that book, hopefully in the next month. And maybe even I would love to read Insomnia by Stephen King. That one is another one that I've been really wanting to get to for a long time. It is technically tied in with the Dark Tower series, which is kind of a video series that I'm hoping to be able to get to here in a little while. So I'd love to get to that book as well, but again, those are just kind of honorable mentions. They're ones that I would love to get to, but we'll see if I have time to get to them. But regardless, I'm really happy that these are the books that I'm going to be reading in the month. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, or even the ones that I kind of mentioned. Let me know what your books are for your TBR in the month of August, or just books that you're excited for in general. I do actually have one other book that I would like to mention. I believe August 3rd is when Stephen King's new book, Billy Summers, is coming out, and you can bet that I'm going to be reading that as soon as possible as well. So I'll definitely be fitting that into this month's reading as well. And I'll have its own designated reading vlog, I'm sure, for that one. Yeah, let me know if you have any big plans for the month of August as well. Please leave a like if you haven't already, and please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, if you're looking forward to more videos from me this month, then I'm really excited to be able to offer them to you. Thank you so much, and hope you have a great day. Bye.